Right there. Uh-oh. Okay. I had to fix the video for YouTube. Trina, hey girl, hey, that's Bobby. My beautiful people. Let's see. Let's move over here. Okay. All right, beautiful people. Betwabu. Yeah, I know, right? Oh, today's story, we are learning about all the details about what happened to Joseph when his brothers sold him. Well, not all the details that led up to it, the in-between stuff that we didn't hear about, which should have been there. It really should have been there, right? Okay. And even how Yahuwah was with him, not just as he grew in Potiphar's house, but as he was in a ditch, why who came and got him, like all that good stuff, y'all. So I'm so excited about that today. But anyway, happy Wednesday, beautiful people. Happy Wednesday, YouTube. All right. Today it is December the 2nd, 2020, day 13 of reading through the books of the law and the prophets, year 3, and of the 3-year consecutive day count. We are on day 683. 683. All right, y'all. And today we are reading Genesis 37, 38, and 39, and the companion chapters that go along with it. It's more chapters than this that go along with the reading for today, but I decided just to pull out the portion about Joseph being sold into slavery. Okay, so let's hop right to it, y'all. Genesis chapter 37. Let me take a sip of water before we get started. Okay, y'all. Genesis chapter 37. So Jacob settled again in the land of Canaan where his father had lived as a foreigner. This is the account of Jacob and his family. When Joseph was 17 years old, he often tended his father's flocks. He worked for his half-brothers and the sons of his father's wives, Bilhah and Zilpah. But Joseph reported to his father some of the bad things his brothers were doing. So they thought Joseph was a tattletale first off, and they getting sick of him now. Like, go on, get out of here, boy. Go on back home. Jacob loved Joseph more than any of his other children because Joseph had been born to him in his old age. So one day, Jacob had a special gift made for Joseph. Oh, sorry, I forgot to make sure my volume was up, y'all. Okay, we're good. It was down, but it must have been okay because I didn't say anything. Okay. Jacob loved Joseph more than any of his other children because Joseph had been born to him in his old age. So one day, Jacob had a special gift made for Joseph, a beautiful robe. But his brothers hated Joseph because their father loved him more than the rest of them. They couldn't say a kind word to him. One night, Joseph had a dream, and when he told his brothers about it, they hated him more than ever. Listen to this dream, he said. We were out in the field, tying up bundles of grain. Suddenly, my bundle stood up, and your bundles all gathered around and bowed low before mine. His brothers responded, So you think you will be our king, do you? Do you actually think you will reign over us? And they hated him all the more because of his dreams and the way he talked about them. Soon, Joseph had another dream, and again he told his brothers about it. Listen, I've had another dream, he said. The sun, the moon, and the 11 stars bowed low before me. This time, he told the dream to his father as well as his brothers, but his father scolded him. What kind of dream is that? He asked. Will your mother and I and your brothers actually come and bow to the ground before you? But while his brothers were jealous of Joseph, his father wondered what the dreams meant. Soon after this, Joseph's brothers went to the pasture of their father's flocks at Shechem. When they had been gone for some time, Jacob had said to Joseph, "Your brothers are pasturing the sheep at Shechem. Get ready, and I will send you to them." "I'm ready to go," Joseph replied. "Go and see how your brothers and the flocks are getting along," Jacob said. "Then come back and bring me a report." So Jacob sent him on his way, and Joseph traveled to Shechem from their home in the valley of Hebron. When he arrived there, a man from the area noticed him wandering around the countryside. "What are you looking for?" he asked. "I'm looking for my brothers," Joseph replied. "Do you know where they are pasturing their sheep?" "Yes," the man told him. "They have moved on from here, but I heard them say, 'Let's go on to Dothan.'" So Joseph followed his brothers to Dothan and found them there. When Joseph's brothers saw him coming, they recognized him in the distance. As he approached, they made plans to kill him. "Here comes the dreamer," they said. "Come on, let's kill him and throw him into one of these cisterns. We can tell our father a wild animal has eaten him. Then we'll see what becomes of his dreams." But when Reuben heard of their scheme, he came to Joseph's rescue. "Let's not kill him," he said. "Why should we shed any blood? Let's just throw him into this empty cistern here in the wilderness. Then he'll die without our laying a hand on him." Reuben was secretly planning to rescue Joseph and return him to his father. So when Joseph arrived, his brothers ripped off the beautiful robe he was wearing. Then they grabbed him and threw him in a cistern. Now the cistern was empty. There was no water in it. Then, just as they were sitting down to eat, they looked up and saw a caravan of camels in the distance coming toward them. It was a group of Ishmaelite traders taking a load of gum, balm, and Aramaic resin from Gilead down to Egypt. Judah said to his brothers, "What will we gain by killing our brother? We'd have to cover up the crime. Instead of hurting him, let's sell him to those Ishmaelite traders." Remember, Ishmaelites were their cousins. "Instead of hurting him, let's sell him to those Ishmaelite traders. After all, he is our brother, our own flesh and blood." And his brothers agreed. So when the Ishmaelites, who were Midianite traders, came by, Joseph's brothers pulled him out of the cistern and sold him to them for 20 pieces of silver. And sold him to them for 20 pieces of silver. And the traders took him to Egypt. Sometime later, Reuben returned to get Joseph out of the cistern. When he discovered that Joseph was missing, he tore his clothes in grief. Then he went back to his brothers and lamented, "The boy is gone. What will I do now?" Then the brothers killed a young goat and dipped Joseph's robe in its blood. They sent the beautiful robe to their father with this message: "Look at what we found. Doesn't this robe belong to your son?" Their father recognized it immediately. "Yes," he said, "it's my son's robe. A wild animal must have eaten him. Joseph has clearly been torn to pieces." Then Jacob tore his clothes and dressed himself in burlap. He mourned deeply for his son for a long time. His family all tried to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted. "I will go to my grave mourning for my son," he would say, and then he would weep. Meanwhile, the Midianite traders arrived in Egypt, where they sold Joseph to Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, the king of Egypt. Potiphar was captain of the palace guard. Now, let me tell you, in Jasher, there is a whole, from the time they sold, from the time Joseph arrived to his brothers until the time the Midianite traders reached Egypt, there's like a whole like 6 pages in Jasher telling about what happened in between there. I'm telling you, that's something they definitely should have not taken out or should have canonized along to the rest of it. But remember, Genesis is just a summation of the full story. And a lot of people don't realize that. They think it's the full story. It's not. Genesis is bits and pieces of the full story, but you would never know that if you never went and read the apocryphal or the hidden books, right? All right. Genesis chapter 38. About this time, Judah left home and moved to Adullam, where he stayed with a man named Hira. There he saw a Canaanite woman, the daughter of Shua, and he married her. When he slept with her, she became pregnant and gave birth to a son, and he named the boy Then she became pregnant again and gave birth to another son. She named him Onan. And when she gave birth to a third son, she named him Shelah. At the time of Shelah's birth, they were living at Kezib. In the course of time, Judah arranged for his firstborn, to marry a young woman named Tamar. But was a wicked man in Yahuwah's sight, so Yahuwah took his life. Then Judah said to Er's brother Onan, "Go marry Tamar, as our law requires of the brother of a man who has died. You must produce an heir for your brother." But Onan was not willing to have a child who would not be his own heir. So whenever he had intercourse with his brother's wife, he spilled his semen on the ground. This prevented her from having a child who would belong to his brother. But Yahuwah considered it an evil for Onan to deny a child to his dead brother. So Yahuwah took Onan's life too. Let me bring something out if y'all didn't catch that. Okay. Okay. When Onan did not give the seed to his wife, which was his brother's previous wife, it said he spilled his seed on the ground. And Yahuwah saw that that was wicked. Not that he spilled his seed on the ground. Of course, that had something to do with it. But the whole point, Yahuwah said it was a wicked thing. It was because he denied his wife a child to be an heir. Okay, so just as long as y'all paid attention to that. But let me just read it again, verse 9 and 10. But Onan was not willing to have a child who would not be his own heir. So whenever he had intercourse with his brother's wife, he spilled the semen on the ground. This prevented her from having a child who would belong to his brother. But Yahuwah considered it evil for Onan to deny a child to his dead brother. So Yahuwah took Onan's life too. Now, men who may be watching this now or later, that is not saying you can just randomly spill your seed on the ground. Okay, I'm going to just leave that there. Then Judah said to Tamar, his daughter-in-law, "Go back to your parents' home and remain a widow until my son Shelah is old enough to marry you." But Judah didn't really intend to do this because he was afraid Shelah would also die like his two brothers. So Tamar went back to live in her father's home. Some years later, Judah's wife died. After the time of mourning was over, Judah and his friend Hira, the Adulamite, went up to Timnah to supervise the shearing of his sheep. Someone told Tamar, "Look, your father-in-law is going up to Timnah to shear his sheep." Tamar was aware that Shelah had grown up, but no arrangements had been made for her to come and marry him. So she changed out of her widow's clothing and covered herself with a veil to disguise herself. Then she sat beside the road at the entrance of the village of Enaim, which is on the road to Timnah. Judah noticed her and thought she was a prostitute, since she had covered her face. So he stopped and propositioned her. "Let me have sex with you," he said, not realizing she was his own daughter-in-law. "How much will you pay to have sex with me?" Tamar asked. "I will send you a young goat from my flock," Judah promised. "But what will you give me to guarantee that you will send the goat?" she asked. "What kind of guarantee do you want?" he replied. She answered, "Leave me your identification seal and its cord and the walking stick you are carrying." So Judah gave them to her. I'm like, Judah, you was hard up, weren't you, bruh? Then he had intercourse with her, and she became pregnant. Afterwards, she went back home, took off her veil, and put on her widow's clothing as usual. Later, Judah asked his friend Hira, the Adulamite, to take the young goat to the woman and to pick up the things he had given her as his guarantee. But Hira couldn't find her. So he asked the men who lived there, "Where can I find the shrine prostitute who was sitting beside the road at the entrance to Enaim?" "We've never had a shrine prostitute here," they replied. So Hira returned to Judah and told him, "I couldn't find her anywhere, and the men of the village claimed they've never had a shrine prostitute there." "Then let her keep the things I gave her," Judah said. "I sent the young goat as we agreed, but you couldn't find her. We'd be the laughing stock of the village if we went back looking for her again." About 3 months later, Judah was told, "Tamar, your daughter-in-law, has acted like a prostitute, and now because of this, she's pregnant." "Bring her out and let her be burned," Judah demanded. But as they was taking her out to kill her, she sent this message to her father-in-law: "The man who owns these things made me pregnant. Look closely. Whose seal and cord and walking stick are these? Judah recognized them immediately and said, she is more righteous than I am because I didn't arrange for her to marry my son Shelah. And Judah never slept with Tamar again. When the time came for Tamar to give birth, it was discovered that she was carrying twins. While she was in labor, one of the babies reached out his hand. The midwife grabbed it and tied a scarlet string around the child's wrist, announcing this one came out first. But then he pulled back his hand and came out his brother. What? The midwife exclaimed. How did you break out first? So he was named Perez. Then the baby with a scarlet string on his wrist was born, and he was named Zerah. I'm like, what kind of kids was being born back then where they sticking their arm out first? Bruh, what kind of... Okay, babe. Genesis chapter 39. And this is the last chapter before we jump over here into Jasher to fill in the missing details, y'all. When Joseph was taken to Egypt by the Ishmaelite traders, he was purchased by Potiphar, an Egyptian officer. Potiphar was captain of the guard for Pharaoh, the king of Egypt. Yahuwah was with Joseph, so he succeeded in everything he did as he served in the home of his Egyptian master. Potiphar noticed this and realized that Yahuwah was with Joseph, giving him success in everything he did. This pleased Potiphar, so he soon made Joseph his personal attendant. He put him in charge of his entire household and everything he owned. From the day Joseph was put in charge of his master's household and property, Yahuwah began to bless Potiphar's household for Joseph's sake. All his household affairs ran smoothly, and his crops and livestock flourished. So Potiphar gave Joseph complete administrative responsibility over everything he owned. I'm sure over here like houseway. Okay, so Potiphar gave Joseph complete administrative responsibility over everything he owned. With Joseph there, he didn't worry about a thing except what kind of food to eat. Joseph was a very handsome and well-built young man, and Potiphar's wife soon began to look at him lustfully. Come and sleep with me, she demanded, but Joseph refused. Look, he told her, Master trusts me with everything in his entire household. No one here has more authority than I do. He has held back nothing from me except you, because you are his wife. How could I do such a wicked thing? It would be a great sin against Yahuwah. Now notice, the written Torah had not been given. It had just been, all right, let me see. It was at this point, at least from my understanding, being orally passed down to everybody, all the descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And even before them, we got to go all the way back. Because remember, wasn't Enoch teaching the sons of men as he reigned over them for like 240 years before he was taken? Wasn't he also teaching the people the ways of Yah? But even before then, if we go all the way back to Seth, but even Cain and Abel knew. So they knew what Yahuwah's commands were. They knew what his laws were. But up until the point when they are brought out of Egypt, do we find that there's not a actual written account, so to speak? Not that I can remember. I'm gonna have to check into that, because as I say that out my mouth, I think I'm wrong. Because I think I remember reading somewhere where it was being passed. I think Methuselah was passing it down. No, I think Enoch had written some stuff down and passed it down to Methuselah. So belay my last. It was written. I'm gonna find it. Okay, but Joseph refused. Look, he told her, my master trusts me with everything in his entire household. No one here has more authority than I do. He has held back nothing from me except you, because you are his wife. How could I do such a wicked thing? It would be a great sin against Yahuwah. I'm not sure why the notification is not popping up. I know a couple people said that before too. Sometimes they got the notification, sometimes they didn't. But just make sure you rung the bell, to make sure you get it. But I know YouTube, it does that sometimes. Even if you have subscribed and rung the bell, for some reason the notification won't come up. All right. So she kept putting pressure on Joseph day after day, but he refused to sleep with her and he kept out of her way as much as possible. One day, however, no one else was around when he went in to do his work. She came and grabbed him by his cloak, demanding, "Come on, sleep with me." Joseph tore himself away, but he left his cloak in her hand as he ran from the house. And when she saw that she was holding his cloak, and he had fled, she called out to her servants. Soon all the men came running. "Look," she said, "my husband has brought this Hebrew slave here to make fools of us. He came into my room to rape me, but I screamed. When he heard me scream, he ran outside and got away, but he left his cloak with me. He left his cloak behind with me." She kept the cloak until her husband came home. Then she told him her story. "That Hebrew slave you brought into our house has tried to come in and fool around with me," she said. "But when I screamed, he ran outside, leaving his cloak with me." Potiphar was furious when he heard his wife's story about how Joseph had treated her. So he took Joseph and threw him into the prison where the king's prisoners were held, and there he remained. But Yahuwah was with Joseph in the prison and showed him his faithful love. And Yahuwah made Joseph a favorite with the prison warden. Before long, the warden put Joseph in charge of all the other prisoners and over everything that happened in the prison. The warden had no more worries because Joseph took care of everything. Yahuwah was with him and caused everything he did to succeed. Okay, y'all. I know, right? Potiphar's wife is a piece of work. We'll read a little bit more about her tomorrow as we fill in some of the details of what happened while he was there. She a hot mess. Okay, y'all. So we're gonna jump right on over here to Jasher. Get all my 1,500 pins and stuff before they fall on the floor again today. Jump right on over here to Jasher chapter 41. Okay. Excuse me. I got to close this. Trina said, "I just want to slap the spit out of her lying mouth." I'm telling you. Okay. Uh-oh. Okay, y'all. Fix that. Okay. Right there. Okay, y'all. Jasher chapter 41. Oh, hit it by mistake. Okay. "And at the revolution of the year, the sons of Jacob journeyed from Shechem, and they came to Hebron to their father Isaac, and they dwelt there. But their flocks and herds they fed daily in Shechem, for there was there in those days good and fat pasture, and Jacob and his sons and all their household dwelt in the valley of Hebron. And it was in those days, in that year, being the 106th year of the life of Jacob, in the 10th year of Jacob's coming from Padan Aram, that Leah, the woman of Jacob, died. She was 51 years old when she died in Hebron." Remember, first of all, Jacob was 106. Leah was 51. And remember, when Rachel died, she was 35 years old. I'm like, I'm going to say something about these ages that you giving your daughters away to be married, Laban. Okay, but I digress. "And Jacob and his sons buried her in a cave in the field of Machpelah, which is in Hebron, which Abraham had bought from the children of Heth for the possession of a burial place." And remember, Rachel was buried along the way when they were traveling, and she was not buried in the cave of their inheritance along with their ancestors, but Rachel was. I'll read it again. "And Jacob and his sons buried her in the cave of the field of Machpelah, which is in Hebron, which Abraham had bought from the children of Heth for possession of a burial place. And the sons of Jacob dwelt with their father in the valley of Hebron, and all the inhabitants of the land knew their strength and their fame. And all the inhabitants of the land knew their strength, and their fame went throughout the land. And Joseph, the son of Jacob, and his brother Benjamin, the sons of Rachel, the woman of Jacob, were yet young in those days, and did not go out with their brethren during the battles in all the cities of the Amorites. And when Joseph saw the strength of his brethren and their greatness, he praised them and extolled them, but he ranked himself greater than them. Here's where he's getting into the details, y'all, of what we didn't hear, right? Okay. And when Joseph saw the strength of his brothers, remember, Joseph and Benjamin was staying with their daddy while the older brothers was out shearing the sheep. Listen, pay attention, y'all. Pay attention so y'all don't miss any of this. And when Joseph saw the strength of his brethren and their greatness, he praised them and extolled them, but he ranked himself greater than them and extolled himself above them. And Jacob, his father, also loved him more than any of his sons, for he was a son of his old age. And through his love toward him, he made him a coat of many colors. And when Joseph saw that his father loved him more than his brethren, he continued to exalt himself above his brethren, and he brought unto his father evil reports concerning them. And the sons of Jacob, seeing the whole of Joseph's conduct toward them, and that their father loved him more than any of them, they hated him and could not speak peaceably to him all the days. And Joseph was 17 years old, and he was still magnifying himself above his brethren, and the thought of raising himself above them. At that time, he dreamed a dream, and he came unto his brothers and told them his dream. And he said unto them, I dreamed a dream, and behold, we were all binding sheaves in the field, and my sheaf rose and placed itself upon the ground, and the sheaves and your sheaves surrounded it and bowed down to it. And his brethren answered him and said unto him, What means this dream? What means this dream that you did dream? Do you imagine in your heart to reign and rule over us? Now let me just point out something about these dreams here. If y'all pay attention to the type of dreams Yahuwah gives, a lot of time we dream nowadays. Well, it depends. You don't know how I tell you about my dreams, and they seem to be like scavenger hunt dreams. Like, okay, I got to go in here and decipher this dream and literally have to interpret it. But a lot of times we try to interpret our dreams with the things here in the Western world. And I've realized over the years, especially the last 3, that I can't interpret my dreams with the interpretation of what we see here in the Western world. I realize I actually have to go back a lot of times to ancient times to decode my dreams. I'm like, oh, shoot, So I just thought it was real interesting on how that their brothers understood what his dream meant, right? You got sheaves bowing down to your sheaves. Just think about the dreams that they give, but they immediately knew the interpretation, right? Okay. Do you imagine in your heart to rule and reign over us? And he still came and told the thing to his father Jacob. And Jacob kissed Joseph when he heard these words from his mouth. And Jacob blessed Joseph. And when the sons of Jacob saw that their father had blessed Joseph and had kissed him, that he loved him exceedingly. And they became jealous of him and hated him the more. And after this, Joseph dreamed another dream and related the dream to his father in the presence of his brethren. And Joseph said unto his father and brethren, Behold, I have again dreamed a dream. And behold, the sun and the moon and the 11 stars bowed down to me. And his father heard the words of Joseph and of his dream. And seeing that his brethren hated Joseph on the account of this matter, Jacob therefore rebuked Joseph before his brethren on the account of this thing, saying, What means this dream which you have dreamed, and this magnifying yourself before your brethren who are older than you are? Do you imagine in your heart that I and your mother and your 11 brethren will come and bow down to you, that you speak these things? And his brethren were jealous of him on the account of his words and dreams, and they continued to hate him. And Jacob reserved the dreams in his heart. And the sons of Jacob went one day to feed their father's flock in Shechem, for they were still herdsmen in those days. And while the sons of Jacob were that day feeding in Shechem, they delayed. And at the time of the gathering and the cattle was past, they had not arrived. And Jacob saw that his sons were delayed in Shechem. And Jacob said within himself, Perchance the people of Shechem have risen up to fight against them. Therefore they have delayed coming this day. And Jacob called Joseph his son and commanded him, saying, Behold, your brethren are feeding in Shechem this day, and behold, they have not yet come back. Go now, therefore, and see where they are, and bring me word back concerning the welfare of your brethren and the welfare of the flock. And Jacob sent his son Joseph to the valley of Hebron, and Joseph came for his brothers to Shechem and could not find them. And Joseph went about in the field which was near Shechem, to see where his brothers had turned, and he missed his road in the wilderness and knew not which way he should go. And an angel of Yahuwah found him wandering in the road toward the field. And Joseph said unto the angel of Yahuwah, remember over here in Genesis, it just tells us that a man on the road. But here it tells us that that man on the road was an angel of Yahuwah, which also reminds us, remember we talked about it, angels can make themselves seen or they can continue to conceal themselves, right? Okay, I just want to make sure y'all paying attention to that. And an angel of Yahuwah found him wandering in the road toward the field. And Joseph said unto the angel of Yahuwah, I seek my brethren. Have you not heard where they are feeding? And the angel of Yahuwah said unto Joseph, I saw your brethren feeding here, and I heard them say that they would go to Dothan. They would go to feed in Dothan. And Joseph hearkened to the voice of the angel of Yahuwah, and he went to his brethren in Dothan, and he found them in Dothan feeding the flock. Now clearly, Yahuwah he knew what was about to happen to Joseph because he sent his angel to tell him where they were at. Otherwise, if that hadn't happened, Joseph would have went back home. And what is about to happen to him may never had happened to him. But we know it was purposed by Yahuwah that this thing would happen because he had foresight in what was coming down the road for all of Jacob's household, right? All right. So Joseph is in fact a type of Messiah for the children of Israel because he was set in place by Yah during this time of great famine that would soon come upon the land that all the household of Jacob may be saved. Okay, just want to make sure y'all trading with me here. Okay, and Joseph advanced to his brethren, and before he excuse me, and before he had come nigh unto them, he had resolved to slay them. And Simeon said to his brethren, Behold, the man of dreams is coming unto us this day, and now therefore come, and let us kill him, and cast him into one of the pits that are in the wilderness. And when his father shall seek him from us, we will say, An evil beast has devoured him. And Reuben heard the words of his brethren. Sorry, I'm going to take a sip of water. Hold on. Okay. And Reuben heard the words of his brethren concerning Joseph, and he said unto them, You should not do this thing, for how can we look up to our father Jacob? Cast him into the pit to die there, but stretch not forth a hand upon him to spill his blood. And Reuben said this in order to deliver him from their hand, to bring him back to his father. And when Joseph came to his brethren, he sat before them, and they rose upon him and seized him and smote him to the earth and stripped the coat of many colors which he had on. And they took him and cast him into the pit. And in the pit there was no water, but serpents and scorpions. And Joseph was afraid of the serpents and scorpions that were in the pit. And Joseph cried out with a loud voice, and Yahuwah hid the serpents and scorpions in the sides of the pit, and they did no harm to Joseph. And Joseph called out from the pit to his brethren and said unto them, What have I done unto you what have I done unto you, and what have I sinned? Why do you not fear Yahuwah concerning me? Am I not of your bones and flesh? And is not Jacob your father, my father? Why do you do this thing unto me this day? And how will you be able to look upon our father Jacob? And he continued to cry out and call unto his brethren from the pit. And he said, O Judah, Simeon, and Levi, my brethren, lift me up from the from the place of the darkness in which you have placed me, and come this day to have compassion on me, ye children of Yahuwah and sons of Jacob my father. And if I have sinned unto you, are you not the sons of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob? If they saw an orphan, they had compassion over him. Or if that one was hungry, they gave him bread to eat. Or one that was thirsty, they gave him water to drink. Or one that was naked, they covered him with garments. And how will you then withhold your pity from your brother? For I am of your flesh and bones. And if I have sinned unto you, surely you would do this on account of my father. And Joseph spoke these words from the pit, and his brethren could not listen to him, nor incline their ears to the words of Joseph. And Joseph was crying and weeping in the pit. I'm sorry, I need to highlight something real quick. I just realized this portion right here, they put in the New Testament, but I never realized until this day where that came from, that this is what they were talking about. Okay. And Joseph spoke these words from the pit, and his brethren could not listen to him, nor incline their ears to the words of Joseph. And Joseph was crying and weeping in the pit. And Joseph said, oh, that my father knew this day the act which my brothers have done unto me, and the words which they have this day spoken unto me. And all his brethren heard his cries and weeping in the pit. And his brethren went and removed themselves from the pit, so that they might not hear the cries of Joseph and his weeping in the pit. Jasher chapter 42. And they went on, and they went and sat on the opposite side, about a distance of a bow shot, and they sat there to eat bread. And while they were eating, they held counsel together what should be done with him, whether to slay him or to bring him back to his father. They were holding the counsel when they lifted up their eyes and saw, and behold, there was a company of Ishmaelites coming at a distance by the road of Gilgal, going down to Mizraim, or going down to Egypt. And Judah said unto them, what gain will it be to us if we slay our brother? Perchance Yahuwah will require him from us. This then is the counsel proposed concerning him, which you shall do unto him. Behold, this company of Ishmaelites going down to Egypt. Now therefore come, let us dispose of him to them, and let not our hand be upon him, and they will lead him along with them, and he will be lost amongst the people of the land, and we will not put him to death with our own hands. And the proposal pleased his brethren, and they did this according to the word of Yahuwah. They didn't even know that Yahuwah was, infiltrating their thoughts. And the proposal pleased his brethren, and they did according to the word. And they did according to the word of Judah. Of course, Yahuwah was behind it, but they did this according to the word of Judah. And while they were discoursing about this matter, and before the company of Ishmaelites had come upon them, 7 trading men of Midian passed by them, and as they passed, they were thirsty. And they lifted up their eyes and saw the pit in which Joseph were immersed. And they looked, and behold, every species of bird was upon him. And these Midianites ran to the pit to drink water, for they thought it had contained water. And on coming before the pit, they heard the voice of Joseph crying and weeping in the pit. And they looked down into the pit, and they saw, and behold, there was a youth of a comely appearance and well favored. And they called unto him and said, who are you, and who brought you hither? Who placed you in this pit in the wilderness? And they all assisted to raise up Joseph, and they drew him out and brought him up from the pit, and took him and went away on their journey, and passed by his brethren. And these said unto them, why do you do this, to take our servant from us and to go away? Surely we placed this youth in the pit because he rebelled against us, and you come and bring him up and lead him away. Now give us back our servant. And the Midianites answered and said unto the sons of Jacob, is this your servant, or does this man attend to you? Perchance you are all his servants, for he is more comely and well favored than any of you. And why do you all speak falsely unto us? Now therefore we will not listen to your words, nor attend to you, for we found the youth in the pit in the wilderness, and we took him, and we will therefore go on. And all the sons of Joseph approached them and rose up against them and said unto them, give us back our servant, and why will you die by the edge of the sword? And the Midianites cried out against them, and they drew their swords and approached to fight with the sons of Jacob. And behold, Simeon rose up from his seat against them, and sprang upon the ground, and drew his sword, and approached the Midianites, and he gave a terrible shout before them, so that his shouting was heard from a distance, and the earth shook at Simeon's shouting. And the Midianites were terrified on the account of Simeon and the noise of his shouting, and they fell upon their faces and were excessively alarmed. And we will find out that this is not the only time Simeon uses his voice. His voice was literally like a weapon, so much so that when he does it in future times, he will cause an entire city of pregnant women to miscarry and the earth to shake. And Simeon said unto them, Truly, I am Simeon, the son of Jacob the Hebrew, who have only with my brother destroyed the city of Shechem and the cities of the Amorites. So shall Yahuwah moreover do unto me, that if all your brethren and the people of Midian and also the kings of Canaan were to come with you, they could not fight against me. Now therefore give us back the youth whom you have taken, lest I give your flesh to the birds of the sky and the beasts of the earth. They be saying some cool stuff. I mean, I ain't gonna go out here and kill nobody, but that's a pretty cool threat. Give it back, lest I give your flesh to the birds of the earth. I gotta keep this in my back pocket. I may not ever use it, but it just sounds cool. Okay. And the Midianites were more afraid of Simeon, and they approached the sons of Jacob with terror and fright, and with pathetic words, saying, Surely you have said that the young man is your servant, and that he rebelled against you, and therefore you place him in the pit. What then will you do with the servant who rebels against his master? Now therefore sell him unto us, and we will give you all that you require for him. And Yahuwah was pleased to do this in order that the sons of Jacob should not slay their brother. And the Midianites saw that Joseph was of a comely appearance and well favored, and they desired him in their hearts and were urgent to purchase him for his brethren. And were urgent to purchase him from his brethren. And the sons of Jacob hearkened to the Midianites and sold their brother Joseph to them for 20 pieces of silver. And Reuben, their brother, was not with them. And the Midianites took Joseph and continued their journey to Gilead. They were going along the road, and the Midianites repented of what they had done in having purchased the young man. And one said to the other, What is this thing we have done in taking this youth from the Hebrews, who is of comely appearance and well favored? Perhaps this youth is stolen from the land of the Hebrews, and why then have we done this thing? And if we should be sought for and found in our hands, we shall die through him. Now surely hardy and powerful men have sold him to us, the strength of one whom you saw this day. Perhaps they stole him from his land with their might and their powerful arm, and have therefore sold him to us for the small value which we gave unto them. And while they were thus discoursing together, they looked, and behold, a company of Ishmaelites, which was coming at first, which the sons of Jacob saw, was advancing toward the Midianites. And the Midianites said to each other, Come, let us sell this youth to the company of the Ishmaelites who are coming toward us, and we will take for him the little that we gave for him, and we will be delivered from this evil. So remember, the Ishmaelites were coming, and Jacob's brother saw them first, and they were originally going to sell them to the Ishmaelites. But the Midianites came past them first, and all this happened. So they sold him to the Midianites. But now the Midianites are having second thoughts about this. And now the same group of Ishmaelites are coming, and they've decided they're going to sell him to them, who his brothers was originally going to sell him to in the first place. Us where the heathens make their novels and movies about our ancestors. Yeah. If you watch a lot of the movies, if you watch a lot of movies and you also are familiar with a lot of the history that was not canonized in the Bible, you will see that all of the movies, the great superhero movies, all that stuff is talking about the sons of Jacob. Y'all, I'm telling y'all, when I realized that, and I actually realized that, I want to say early last year, because I like watching superhero movies. I got a house full of boys. We like bang bang, shoot 'em up, wrestling, all this stuff, superhero running through the house. I'm Wonder Woman and stuff. It's It's really loud in my house all day long, running around here with boys. And now we got a little tiny woman superhero running around here with us too. So, but when I realized that, it blew me away. And me and one of my sisters was actually discussing this. So when we see like the different movies, we're like, hey, did you see this? Go watch this one. This is talking about this. Remember back in the Apocrypha in Jasher when I was talking about this? This is where they pulled that from. You're absolutely right. They pulled these stories right from our history, from our ancestors. Okay, let me go back here. And the Midianites went on their road to Gilead, and the Ishmaelites took Joseph, and they let him ride upon one of the camels, and they were leading him to Egypt. And Joseph heard that the Ishmaelites were proceeding to Egypt, and Joseph lamented, wept at this thing, that he was to be so far removed from the land of Canaan from his father, and he wept bitterly while he was riding upon the camel. Listen to this, y'all. Yeah, the Avengers and Spider-Man, definitely all the Avengers series, all of them, all of them. And he wept bitterly while he was riding upon the camel. And one of their men observed him and made him go down from the camel and walk on foot. Notwithstanding this, Joseph continued to cry and weep. And he said, oh, my father, my father. And one of the Ishmaelites rose up and smote Joseph on the cheek. And he still continued to weep. And Joseph was fatigued in the road, and he was unable to proceed on the account of the bitterness of his soul. And they all smote him and afflicted him in the road, and they terrified him in order that he might cease from weeping. And Yahuwah saw the ambition of Joseph and his trouble, and Yahuwah brought down upon those men darkness and confusion, and the hand of everyone that smote him became withered. Oh my gosh, what if our people knew that Yahuwah had done this in previous times? And our ancestors who was being beaten with whips and all this stuff. Remember, they took their punishment or the captivity of Yahuwah's people overboard. And had they had known this story or previous stories of how Yahuwah deals with some of the people immediately when we cry out to him about what they're doing, how many of our captors' hands would have been withered when they went to go pick up a whip? Like they would have been powerless. But I can see why it didn't happen, because the sentence had to be served. But Yahuwah has not forgotten anything that our captors have done to us and our ancestors. But now we know we got this information, and you may not be being physically whipped, but you could be in a situation where it's truly not your fault and people are rising up against you. If you remember some of these things that Yahuwah has done before in past times, you can cry out to him in the same way, and he will immediately hear you and come to your rescue, especially if you are keeping his ways and you are living according to how he set out for his people to live. And it's pretty much just being good, decent people, not to take advantage of anybody, not to do anything against anybody. Just be a good, decent person. And, yeah, the system daily whipping us. You got that right. Okay. All right. Listen, y'all. And Yahuwah saw the ambition of Joseph and his trouble. And Yahuwah brought down upon those men darkness and confusion. And the hand of everyone that smote him became withered. And they said to each other, what is this thing that Yahuwah has done to us in a road? And they knew not this befell them on the account of Joseph. And the men proceeded on the road, and they passed along the road of Ephrath, where Rachel was buried. Listen to this, y'all. And Joseph reached his mother's grave. And I thought about this. I'm like, maybe this is why, maybe Yahuwah also, and I'm sure he definitely knows way more than we do. Maybe this is why Rachel was buried in the road and she wasn't buried in the cave, because of this particular thing that's coming up now. Listen to this. All right, y'all. And Joseph reached his mother's grave, and Joseph hastened and ran to his mother's grave and fell upon the grave and wept. And Joseph cried aloud upon his mother's grave. Remember, this is Rachel's grave. And he said, oh, my mother, oh, you who did give birth to me, awake now and rise and see your son, how he has been sold for a slave and no one to pity him. Oh, rise and see your son. Weep with me on account of my troubles and see the heart of my brethren. Rise, my mother. Arouse Awake from your sleep for me and direct your battles against my brethren. Oh, how they have stripped me of my coat and sold me already twice for a slave and separated me from my father, and there is no one to pity me. Arouse and lay your cause against them before Yahuwah, and see Yahuwah and see whom Yahuwah will justify in the judgment and whom he will condemn. Rise, O my mother, rise, awake from your sleep, and see my father, how his soul is with me this day, and comfort him and ease his heart. And Joseph continued to speak these words. And Joseph cried aloud and wept bitterly upon his mother's grave, and he ceased speaking, and from the bitterness of heart he became still as a stone upon the grave. And Joseph heard a voice speaking to him from beneath the ground, which answered him with bitterness of heart and with a voice of weeping and praying in these words: my son Joseph, I have heard the voice of your weeping and the voice of your lamentation. I have seen your tears. I know your troubles, my son, and it grieves me for your sake, and abundant grief is added to my grief. Now, therefore, my son, Joseph, my son, hope to Yahuwah and wait for him, and do not fear, for Yahuwah is with you. He will deliver you from all trouble. Rise, my son, go down to Mitzrayim with your masters, and do not fear, for Yahuwah is with you, my son. And she continued to speak like unto him these words unto Joseph, and she was still. And Joseph heard this, and he wondered greatly at this, and he continued to weep. And after this, one of the Ishmaelites observed him crying and weeping upon the grave, and his anger was kindled against him, and he drove him from there, and he smote him and cursed him. Let me bring out something. Now, at first, yeah, I know, right? I this is one of the stories where I was teared up too. And I thought about this. I'm like, first of all, y'all, we ain't supposed to be talking to those that have gone into eternity, those beyond the grave. You know, we're not to consult with the dead, right? So I was thinking about this. I'm like, Father, I don't know. But then I began to think about if anybody's ever lost anybody close to them. Sometimes you find yourself, although you know they're not there, but we clearly know they've gone into the spirit world, and we don't really know for real if they hear us or not, right? So I'm like, this was probably one of those type of things. He was missing his mom, and he was just crying out, and he probably knew she couldn't rise from the grave. But I thought about it. I was like, okay, that don't really seem too far-fetched, because especially if somebody is really close with whoever it was, they tend to do this from time to time. Not that they're trying to raise them from the grave, but they're literally just pouring out their hearts in grief, right? Okay, so. And Joseph heard this, and he wondered greatly at this, and he continued to weep. And after this, one of the Ishmaelites observed him crying and weeping upon the grave, and his anger was kindled against him, and he drove him from there, and he smote him and cursed him. And Joseph said unto the men, may I find grace in your sight to take me back to my father's house, and he will give you an abundance of riches. And they answered him, saying, are you not a slave? And where is your father? And if you had a father who you would not, are you not a slave? And where is your father? And if you had a father, you would not already twice have been sold for a slave for so little value. And their anger was still roused against him, and they continued to smite him and to chastise him. And Joseph wept bitterly. And Yahuwah saw Joseph's affliction, and Yahuwah again smote these men and chastised them. And Yahuwah caused darkness to envelop them upon the earth, and the lightning flashed, and the thunder roared, and the earth shook at the voice of the thunder, and the mighty wind, and the men. I be reading too fast, y'all, and I be messing the sentence up. And the thunder roared, and the earth shook at the voice of the thunder and of the mighty wind. And the men were terrified and knew not where they should go. And the beasts and camels stood still, and they led them, but they would not go. They smote them, and they crouched upon the ground. And the men said to each other, what is this that Yahuwah has done to us? What are our transgressions, and what are our sins, that this thing has thus befallen us? And one of them answered and said unto them, perhaps on the account of the sin of afflicting a slave has this thing happened to us this day. Now therefore implore him strongly to forgive us, and then we shall know on whose account that this evil befalls us. If Yahuwah shall have compassion over us, then we shall know that all this comes on us on the account of the sin of afflicting this slave. And the men did so, and they supplanted Joseph, and they supplicated Joseph and pressed him to forgive them. And they said, we have sinned to Yahuwah and you. Now therefore vouchsafe to request of your God that he shall put away this death from among us, for we have sinned to him. And Joseph did according to their words, and Yahuwah hearkened to Joseph, and Yahuwah put away the plague which he had inflicted upon those men on the account of Joseph. And the beast rose up from the ground, and they conducted them, and they went on, and the raging storm abated, and the earth became tranquilized, and the men proceeded on their journey to go down to Egypt. And the men knew that this evil had befallen them on the account of Joseph. And they said to each other, behold, we know that it was on the account of the affliction of it that this evil befell us. Now therefore, why shall we bring this death upon our souls? Let us hold counsel what to do with this slave. And one answered and said, surely he told us to bring him back to his father. Now therefore come, let us take him back, and we will go to the place that he tells us, and we will take from his family the price that we gave for him, and we will go away. And one answered again and said, behold, this counsel is very good, but we cannot do so, for the way is very far from us, and we cannot go out of our road. And one more answered and said unto them, this is a counsel to be adopted. We will not swerve from it. Behold, we are going this day to Egypt, and when we shall have come to Egypt, we will sell him there at a high price, and we will be delivered from this evil. And this thing pleased the men, and they did so, and they continued their journey to Egypt with Joseph. Okay, y'all, the last chapter we're going to read for today is Jasher chapter 43, and it's going to fill in the rest of this. But we're going to pick it back up tomorrow with some of the other things. Jasher chapter 43. And when the sons of Jacob had sold their brother Joseph to the Midianites, their hearts were smitten on account of him, and they repented of their acts, and they sought for him to bring him back, but could not find him. And Reuben returned to the pit in which Joseph had been put, in order to lift him out and restore him to his father. And Reuben stood by the pit, and he heard not a word, and he called out, Joseph, Joseph, and no one answered or uttered a word. Reuben said, Joseph has died through fright, or some serpents has caused his death. And Reuben descended into the pit, and he searched for Joseph and could not find him in the pit, and he came out again. Now, he must have been extremely strong or very agile, at least more so than Joseph was. Well, we know Joseph was 17 years old, and the brothers were a little bit older. So maybe when he went down there, maybe he had a rope or something when he climbed back out. But anyway, he climbed down there by himself, and he got himself out of there. Apparently, it was something that Joseph couldn't do. So he either had some tools that pulled himself back out, or bro, he was just going to the side of the pit. I don't know. It may not even been that close to where he could do it. I don't know. But anyway, he put himself in the pit, and he got himself out the pit. I'm just saying, I'm be paying attention to the details. I'm like, okay, well, he probably had something, a rope, so he can pull himself back out. I don't know. Maybe I be doing too much, but I be looking at all the details to make sure I don't miss nothing. Okay. And he searched for Joseph and could not find him in the pit, and he came out again. And Reuben tore his garments, and he said, the child is not there. And how shall I reconcile my father about him if he be dead? And he went to his brethren and found them grieving on account of Joseph, and counseling together how to reconcile their father about him. And Reuben said to his brethren, I came to the pit, and behold, Joseph was not there. What then shall we say to our father? For my father will only seek the lad from me. And the brethren answered him, saying, thus and thus we did, and our hearts afterwards smote us on account of this act, and we now seek a pretext how we shall reconcile our father to it. So after they sold their brother, it said that their hearts were smitten, and they, sometimes people do things that they don't really mean to do in the midst of being extremely angry. So it's just something good to remember. If you're extremely angry about something, especially if you are around family members or friends or somebody else, you should probably pause take a breath and think about how you're going to respond. Now I know sometimes some anger, it we need to act immediately, especially if somebody's doing harm to us. But he hadn't laid a hand on his brothers. He was just simply talking, So in this case, they could be like, listen, bro, get out of here. But they allowed Joseph to get under their skin with how he lifted himself up in pride against them, carrying himself like he was their leader. Reuben said unto them, what is this that you have done to bring down the gray hairs of our father in sorrow to Sheol? This thing is not good that you have done. And Reuben sat with them, and they all rose up and swore to each other not to tell this thing to Jacob. And they all said, the man who will tell this to our father or his household, or who will report this to any of the children of the land, we will all arise up against him and slay him with the sword. And the sons of Jacob feared each other in this matter, from the youngest to the oldest, and no one spoke a word, and they concealed the thing in their hearts. And they afterwards sat down to determine and invent something to say to their father Jacob concerning all these things. And Issachar said unto them, here is an advice for you. If it seems good in your eyes to do this thing, take the coat which belongs to Joseph and tear it, and kill a kid of the goats and dip it in his blood, and send it to our father when he sees it. And he will say, an evil beast has devoured him. Therefore tear ye his coat, and behold, his blood will be upon his coat. And by your doing this, we shall be free of our father's murmurings. And Issachar's advice pleased them, and they hearkened unto him and did according to the word of Issachar, which he had counseled them. And all this time I'm sitting here thinking, Jacob could have cried out to Yah, and he probably did, and asked what had happened. But in this manner, we see that Yahuwah was silent and did not readily reveal to him what had actually happened to Joseph. And it was planned that way because of something else that was coming up. So and y'all heard this saying before, what was meant to be for Joseph's demise, or what was meant to be bad, Yahuwah turned it around and made it good. Okay. And Issachar's advice pleased them, and they hearkened unto him, and they did according to the word of Issachar, which he had counseled them. And they hastened and took Joseph's coat and tore it, and they killed a kid of the goats, and dipped the coat in the blood of the kid, and then trampled it in the dust. And they sent the coat to their father Jacob by the hand of Naphtali. And they commanded him to say these words, we had gathered the cattle and come in as far as the road to Shechem and farther. And we found this coat upon the road in the wilderness, dipped in the blood and in dust. Now therefore know whether it be your son's coat or not. And Naphtali went, and he came unto his father, and he gave him the coat, and he spoke unto him all these words which his brethren had commanded him. And Jacob saw Joseph's coat, and he knew it, and fell upon his face to the ground, and became as still as a stone. And afterward he rose up and cried out with a loud voice, weeping, and he said, it is the coat of my son Joseph. And Jacob hastened and sent one of his servants to his sons, who went to them and found them coming along the road with the flock. And the sons of Jacob came to their father about evening, and behold, their garments were torn, and dust was upon their head. And they found their father crying and weeping with a loud voice. And Jacob said unto his sons, tell me truly, what evil have you this day suddenly brought upon me? And they answered their father Jacob, saying, we were coming along this day, after the flock had been gathered in, and we came as far as the city of Shechem by the road in the wilderness, and we found this coat filled with the blood upon the ground, and we knew it, and we sent it to you, if you could know it. And Jacob heard the words of his sons, and he cried out with a loud voice, and he said, it is the coat of my son, an evil beast has devoured him. Joseph is rent in pieces, for I sent him this day to see whether it was well with you, and well with the flocks, and to bring me word again from you. And he went as I commanded him. And this has happened to him this day, while I thought my son was with you. And the sons of Jacob answered and said, He did not come to us, neither have we seen him from the time of our going out until now. And when Jacob heard their words, he again cried out aloud, and he rose up and tore his garments, and he put sackcloth upon his loins, and he wept bitterly and mourned and lifted up his voice, weeping, and exclaimed and said these words, Joseph, O my son Joseph, I sent you this day after the welfare of your brethren, and beheld, you have been torn in pieces. Through my hand has this happened to you, my son. And I guess that the brother's story was so convincing that Jacob was just like, you know what? He's dead. He's gone. It grieves me for you, Joseph, my son. It grieves me for you. How sweet were you to me during life, and now how exceeding bitter is your death to me. Oh that I had died in your stead, Joseph, my son, for it grieves me sadly for you, my son. Oh, my son, Joseph, my son, where are you, and where have you been drawn? Arouse, arouse from your place, and come see my grief for you, oh my son Joseph. Come now and number the tears gushing from my eyes down my cheeks, and bring them up before Yahuwah, that his anger may be turned from me. O Joseph, my son, how did you fall? By the hand of one, by the hand whom no one hath fallen from the beginning of the world unto this day. For you have been put to death by the smiting of an enemy, inflicted with cruelty, but surely I know that this has happened to you on the account of the multitudes of my sins. Arouse now and see how bitter is my trouble for you, my son. Although I did not rear you, nor fashion you, nor give you breath and soul, but it was Yahuwah who formed you and built your bones and covered them with flesh and breathed into your nostrils the breath of life, and then he gave you unto me. Excuse me, y'all. Okay. Sorry. Okay. I'm feeling myself. Filling myself up with vitamin C and zinc. The weather changing and stuff. We'll be out here with the kids. Okay, so, okay, we're good. And Joseph continued to speak. I'm sorry, hold on. Now, Yahuwah, who gave you unto me, he has taken you from me, and such then has befallen you this day, and all the works of Yahuwah are good. And Jacob continued to speak like this unto these words concerning Joseph, and he wept bitterly, and he fell to the ground and became still. And all the sons of Jacob, seeing their father's trouble, they repented of what they had done, and they also wept bitterly. And Judah rose up and lifted his father's head from the ground and placed it upon his lap, and he wiped his father's tears from his cheeks. And Judah wept and exceedingly great weeping, while his father's head was reclining upon his lap, still as a stone. And the sons of Jacob saw their father's trouble, and they lifted up their voices and continued to weep. And Jacob was yet lying upon the ground, still as a stone. And all his sons and his servants' children rose up and stood around him to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted. And the whole household of Jacob rose up and mourned a great mourning on account of Joseph and their father's trouble. And the intelligence reached Isaac, the son of Abraham, the father of Jacob, and he wept bitterly on account of Joseph, he and all his household. And he went from the place where he dwelt in Hebron, and his men with him, and he comforted Jacob his son, and he refused to be comforted. And after this, Jacob rose up from the ground, and his tears were running down his cheeks. And he said unto his sons, Rise up and take your swords and your bows, and go forth into the field, and seek whether you can find my son's body, and bring it unto me, that I may bury it. Seek also, I pray you, among the beasts, and hunt them, and that which shall come the first before you, seize and bring it unto me. Perhaps Yahuwah will this day pity my affliction, and prepare before you that which did tear my son in pieces, and bring it to me, and I will avenge the cause of my son. And his sons did as their father had commanded them. And they rose up early in the morning, and each took his sword and his bow in his hand, and they went forth into the field to hunt the beast. And Jacob was still crying aloud and weeping, and walking to and fro in the house, and smiting his hands together, saying, Joseph, my son, Joseph, my son. And the sons of Jacob went into the wilderness to seize the beast. And behold, a wolf came toward them, and they seized him, and they brought him unto their father, and they said unto him, This is the first we have found, and we brought him unto you as you did command us, and your son's body we could not find. And Jacob took the beast from the hands of his son, and he cried with a loud and weeping voice, holding the beast in his hand, and he spoke with a bitter heart unto the beast. Why did you devour my son Joseph? And how did you have no fear of the God of the earth, or of my trouble? I'm sorry, I'm reading that wrong. Why did you devour my son Joseph? And how did you have no fear of the God of the earth, or of my trouble for my son Joseph? And you did devour my son for naught, because he committed no violence, and did thereby render me culpable on his account. Therefore, Yahuwah will require him that is persecuted. If that beast could open his mouth and talk and tell him, hey, look, your son's lying. I ain't do it, man. I ain't do it. Please don't kill me. Please don't kill me, man. I ain't do it. I promise you. I ain't kill him. Listen, hold on. Belay my last. And Yahuwah opened the mouth of the beast in order to comfort Jacob with its words. And it answered Jacob and spoke these words unto him. Listen. I forgot this part was here, y'all. Listen. Okay. And Yahuwah opened the mouth of the beast in order to comfort Jacob with its words. And it answered Jacob and spoke these words unto him. As Yahuwah lives, who created us in this earth, and as your soul lives, my Lord, I did not see your son, neither did I tear him to pieces. But from a distant land, I also came to seek my son. Look, you looking for your son? I'm looking for my son too. Okay, let me stop. It really says that I'm okay. Let me just read it again. Start at 43. And Yahuwah opened the mouth of the beast in order to comfort Jacob with its words. And it answered Jacob and spoke these words unto him. As Yahuwah lives, who created us in the earth, and as your soul lives, my Lord, I did not see your son, neither did I tear him to pieces. But from a distant land, I also came to seek my son, who went from me this day, and I know not whether he be living or dead. And I came this day into the field to seek my son, and your sons found me and seized me and increased my grief, and have this day brought me before you, and now I have now spoken all my words to you. And now, therefore, O son of Adam, I am in your hands. Do unto me this day as it may seem good in your sight. But by the life of Yahuwah who created me, I did not see your son, nor did I tear him to pieces. Neither has the flesh of man entered my mouth all the days of my life. And when Jacob heard the words of the beast, he was greatly astonished, and sent forth the beast from his hand, and she went her way. And Jacob was still crying aloud and weeping for Joseph day after day, and he mourned for his son many days. And that, my beautiful people, is our reading for today. We'll pick it back up tomorrow because the story continues. It's going to continue here just like it continues in Genesis. So we're just going to pick it back up here. Yeah, I think we're going to pick it back up here tomorrow. All right, y'all. So that was our reading for today. Genesis 37, 38, and 39, and Jasher 41, 42, and 43. Let's hit that right there. Okay. Yeah, you're right. Yahuwah was molding him so he wouldn't be prideful when the time came for him to truly be the ruler. I agree with that. Aliyah said, same thing happening to us. The Most High is molding us till he brings us back to the wilderness and been righteous ruler over our enemies, so we won't be prideful like we were. I agree. I truly agree. If we would learn from those things, we would definitely learn how to be humble. Who would definitely rise us up to the place that he wants us to be. All right, y'all. So we're going to the blessing. Numbers chapter 6. Okay. All right, y'all. Remember, first 21 verses is the Nazarite vow. And the blessing begins at verse 22 all the way to verse 27, which is the last verse in this chapter. And Yahuwah spake unto Moses, saying, speak unto Aaron and unto his sons, saying, on this wise, ye shall bless the children of Israel, saying unto them, may Yahuwah bless us and keep us. May Yahuwah make his face to shine upon us and be gracious unto us. May Yahuwah lift up his countenance upon us and give us his peace. And they shall put my name upon the children of Israel, and I will bless them. All right, beautiful people. That's it. Tomorrow, I will see y'all bright and early. Same time, same place. 7:15 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. All right, y'all. Love y'all. Peace.